I'm Rob from Barefoot Gaming, and today we review the ButtKicker Gamer2 used in VR. So for those of you wondering what this thing actually is, it is a haptic device that attaches to your office chair or your gaming chair for when you're playing games directly seated. Keep in mind, virtual reality is not all standing, it's not all room scale. There are some really good seated experiences, and I tried out a bunch of them with this device. That being said, this is not exclusive to VR. Any 2D or pancake game will work fine with the Gamer2. So long story short, what this is it attaches to the base or the stand of your chair, and it takes low frequencies and it creates a rumble that shakes your entire chair. Now, I myself tried this on 3 totally different chairs. It all fits fine. It's actually got a lot of play, and it can go around a fairly large diameter stand or a quite narrow diameter stand. The only thing I ran across is that the plastic pieces that often hide it shook while the chair was shaking, and in one case my arms shook quite heavily, the arms of the chair, which created a rattle, and that was only on one of the chairs. But that is something to keep in mind. You may have to tighten everything up, or you may even have to rest your arms on it. I'm getting ahead of myself. This is not the only hardware that you need. It also comes with this power amplifier. Now, without getting into too many of the details, because if you want the details, I will have a link so you can check their website out. The device hooks up directly to the back of this. You've got an output that runs either from your headphones, your headphone jack on your computer to here, or if you're using USB, there's a couple extra steps, because if you're using USB, the USB tends to disable the headphone jack, which this needs. So there is a workaround, but it's something else to do. In the front, you'll notice there is a power button. There's also a power in the back. You've got a low cutoff filter. There's a high cutoff frequency that you can play with, an on-off. There is a signal light, a clip light, and a volume up and down, as well as a remote that you can plug into this, that while you're sitting at your chair, you can tweak it. And every game will need tweaking. No matter which games I ran back and forth to, every one I had to adjust either up or down. Unless all you're after is just a constant rumble in your chair, which isn't really haptic feedback, it's just a rumble. And on my own personal chair, I found I actually had to keep my arms on my armrests because they're adjustable up and down, and what ended up happening was that part, that plastic, just shook every time the low frequency would go, which was quite loud. So all that being said, the ButtKicker itself isn't very loud. It does have an audible noise. I went through an elaborate setup to have one webcam pointing at the ButtKicker, one pointing at me, and then recording the gameplay itself. And it turns out that you can't actually see it shake. You can feel it shake, definitely feel it shake, but you will not actually see any movement. So I killed the whole system, and I just recorded gameplay because that's the part that I'm going to be talking about. Does this affect gameplay, and does it add to the gameplay is really what you should be asking yourself. I would definitely class this as a premium device. It goes for $169.95 for both the ButtKicker and for the amp, and the amp is, to my basic understanding, is a subwoofer amp. So I threw this up against a whack of games. I went through racing games, flight games, space flight games, I went through experiences, and everyone kind of gave me different results. Now, as far as racing games go, I threw Dirt Rally up against it, I threw Project Cars up against it, really hoping for the haptic feedback to really add to the game. What you have to keep in mind is this isn't really designed for individual games. What this responds to is frequencies. So the low frequencies. And when you think of, let's say, a PlayStation 2 controller or any controller that has a rumble feature, that's kind of the feature you're getting. You're just getting it throughout your body because it's actually hooked up to your chair and shaking all of you. So the only place you're actually going to feel a rumble in games like Project Cars or games like Dirt Rally are when the frequencies are really low. That being said, I found the racing games to be the ones that were least responsive to low frequencies. Now, there is software out there that'll fix that. I think it's called Sim Vibe, and it runs $89 US. So I didn't pick that up, and I didn't try it out with the racing games. But my understanding is what it does is it takes different frequencies and it adjusts them at different spots so that when you're actually, the car is rumbling and you don't necessarily have a low bass, you're actually getting the rumble effect, but you won't get that out of package. So that was my experience with the racing games. Flight games, on the other hand, were the total other end of the spectrum. Elite Dangerous, DCS, both of them actually performed really well. I found that playing Elite Dangerous and flying through space, for whatever reason, the programmers, when they set that game up, run a lot of rumble. They run a lot of low bass. So when you're accelerating, when you're really pushing, when you're firing, you get a lot of kickback, and that one really added to the immersion. Moving on from there, we've got rhythm games or music games. So I played Thumper in VR, and that was really cool. Now, what I did before I played any game is I made sure that the clipping light wasn't blinking when I shouldn't be feeling force feedback. So in a game like Thumper, it actually adds a fair amount because you're feeling it loudly if you've turned up the volume in a game like Thumper where you should, and you're feeling it in your body. Every time you clear those jumps, every time you do the attack, you'll actually feel it, and it definitely adds to the experience. Speaking of experiences, I also tried Ultimate Booster. Now, Ultimate Booster wasn't one that performed especially well. Part of that is because you want to feel haptic feedback or force feedback the entire time that you're swinging back and forth, and the only time the device responds is when it hits low frequencies. In that case, you're only catching it when you're at the bottom of the swing, which is neat, but I'd really like to have felt it throughout. Part of this was a learning curve to see where this performed well and where this missed the mark. And honestly, everywhere where it did miss the mark, in other places it performed really well. Movies. Now, I'm not usually a person that watches movies at my computer. I've got a little home theater. The movies, and again, I picked one at random. Which is more than anything else just an excuse to show off what water does on my chair when the butt kicker is shaking. Still pretty darn neat. And lest you think I forget, I actually tried Alien Isolation in both VR and flat. Now, clearly, like I mentioned before, this works in virtual reality as well as it does in flat games, any game that'll utilize the low frequencies. Alien Isolation does a really good job at this. When you are hiding and when the alien is sneaking around and you actually hear that thump thump, and it actually drives the game and it makes it quite a bit cooler. So before deciding, keep in mind your experiences will vary. This also hooks up directly to consoles, so it's not just for PC gamers. This thing has a crazy long cable. I think it's about 10 feet before it actually attaches to the amplifier itself. If you live in an apartment, I would probably say you'd want to put a rubber mat of some sort between you and the floor, or a condo. If you're in your home, your chair isn't going to make much noise. If you're in a situation like I am and you have someone sitting beside you, you will actually be able to hear the actuator or the motor or whatever is happening inside of this. You'll actually hear the buzzing as it sits beside you. It's not super loud, but I'm going to be straightforward. It is for sure noticeable. That's it. I hope I covered all the bases. There was a lot to go through. The specifications on this product are listed on the website, which I will link directly below. If you're looking at buying this, question which games you want to use with it. Think about how often they're going to be using low frequencies, because as I mentioned through the list, some games work amazing and some it doesn't really add anything at all. And that's it. I'm going to leave a link to the product in the description. If you have any questions, feel free to fire them at me. I may not be able to answer, but I'll do my best. I love hearing from you either way. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment. I'm out of here. Talk to you again real soon. See ya.